What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Calgary Barbell. You are here in Calgary Barbell Lockdown HQ. Now, we talked about recently in an RPE video, we told everybody that we were going to do a more in-depth programming video where we talk about ways to implement RPE, ways to start utilizing RPE. If you haven't seen that RPE video, go ahead and check the description box below. Maybe Dylan will put an annotation on here, maybe not, who knows. But anyways, watch that RPE video. It's going to give you a good sort of baseline of knowledge for what we're going to get into in this video. This video is going to be pretty technical. I mean, not overly so, but we're going to get into a fair bit of programming theory. We're going to get into how and why some of the basic prescriptions work the way they do and how to program. So this video is all about how to use RPE to prescribe intensity for your programming. So what I've got here is just basically a little spreadsheet that I've made up to give us an example of how we're going to do some of these different protocols. So there's a few different protocols. The first one I'm going to talk about is what's called using indicator sets. So this is a very popular way of doing things. Probably the most popular one you'll see is a single at 8, because that's going to give us a really good idea of estimated 1 rep max. Now, again, if you're unclear on any of this, go back to the other RPE video, but you can use anything from singles at 8, triple at 9, anything probably all the way up into maybe 4 and 5 reps. I think once you get past 4 and 5 reps, that RPE rating is going to become a little bit, the resolution of your E1RM from that is going to become a little bit fuzzier, right? The closer you are to a single, probably the more effectively we're going to gauge what our max is that day. Now, the idea here is not to take a max, but to take a sub-maximal rep or heavier set to indicate what our max might be for this day. From that, you can basically prescribe any of your drop back work, right? So the majority of your work using this kind of prescription is probably going to be percentage based, right? But the reason that we do the indicator set beforehand is so that these percentages are based off of an accurate max, right? We want to be able to base these numbers off of something that's actually relevant to this session in your current condition. You can also pair these with RPEs, right? So if you want this lifter to do these, you can put an additional limiter on these and say, okay, we want these to be at 6.5. So if you do one of these and it's at 7, take some weight off, because we want these to be, regulated at a 6.5. So you can use RPEs on your back off sets, but one of the reasons we use indicator sets is to get the E1RM. We use that to prescribe our back off work. And then throughout a block of training, you can periodize that just like you normally would, right? 6s into 5s the next week, 4s, 3s. It's very linear. It's very standard periodization. Nothing crazy coming at you here. This is just a basic way of like, okay, before I do these percentage-based sets, I'm going to get a really good idea of where I'm at on this movement on this day, because you will have performance fluctuations. You will have days where you're better or worse, like we talked about in the RPE video, and taking advantage of those is the key to maximizing your progression, keeping your recovery in track, or on track rather, and all of those kinds of good things. So the next way of doing things that we're going to talk about is what are called ramping sets. Now, these are pretty popular. If you've done the Calgary Barbell free 16-week program, you've probably done a ton of these, right? And a lot of people always ask me, what's the F, what's the R? Well, we're going to get into that here, right? I do call these load drops now as opposed to fatigue sets. But anyways, basically you're going to go in with a goal for the day. So you're going to look at the RPE chart ahead of time, and your prescription is going to be, you're trying to hit 100 for 4. Right? That's your goal weight. Now, depending on what, prescription you're using, you might be trying to hit that at a 9 or hit that at an 8. That will dictate, that'll be based off of your estimated max and what you're trying to do that day, whether you're trying to hit it at an 8 or 9. Anyways, if you're trying to hit a 9, basically you want to take your goal weight and you're going to use minus 5% here and minus 10% here, right? So that we have what are called ramp up sets. So we have our first 2 sets are ramp up sets, and they're essentially very similar to the indicator sets we were using beforehand. Am I on track to hit this goal weight for the day? Now, basically we're looking for, if your top set's going to be 100 for 4 to 9, and you take 5% off and 10% off. So you're going to start off with 90 kilos for 4, and you're going to aim for it to be at a 7. If it's higher, you're going to adjust your subsequent work. If it's lower, you can adjust your subsequent work. The idea here is that we use these ramp up sets to basically shift the goalposts so that wherever that ball is going is the right direction, right? Now, same thing if we're going for 8, we just start at a 6. Same thing, minus 10% here, minus 5% here, and this is the goal set. And these are going to be ramp ups as well, right? So same structure, same way of going through your workout. You're going to have basically 3 sets to get to your top set or goal set. And then from there, your back off is usually prescribed in one of 2 ways. Now, these were called Fs or fatigues in the 16-week program. So if you went through there, for the most part, these are going to be about 5%, and they're going to be off of an at 9 goal set. So let's say you were hitting this, goal is 100 for 4 out of 9 right here. And you have a 5% load drop, and you're supposed to do 2 load drops or 2 fatigue sets, 2 F sets, whatever you want to call them. Basically what's going to happen is you're going to hit that top set. If it's appropriately at a 9, like you wanted, you're going to come down and do the same number of reps with 5% less weight. Now, usually the fatigue is going to carry over a little bit, and these are probably going to be closer to, anywhere between an 8 and 9. I have them written down at a 9 here because, like I said, we're going to carry some fatigue into those subsequent sets, but either way you do them, that's fine. Now, the other way we do things is a repeat sets. And one of the ways, the most common pairing here is going to be off of an at 8 top set. So if you go through the Calgary Barbell 16-week program, you can see the at 9s have a load drop or a fatigue set. The at 8s have repeat sets. So in this case, we're doing 100 for 4 at an 8, and we're doing 2 repeat sets, right? So we're going to see this next one. Oh, it's still at an 8. This next one, okay, we're at an 8.5. But the idea here is that the weight stays the same. For both of these, the reps stay the same. And that's basically how we progress from that top set. Now, the next protocol we're going to talk about is the maintenance protocol. This is the third of 3. So we're going to go from here into some progression ideas and how we can sort of build week to week using some of these protocols. Now, the maintenance protocol is going to be usually for less specific movements, right? So if you're doing some dumbbell overhead press, or you're doing whatever sort of preparatory movement to try to train the muscles as opposed to the movement, and basically you just want a good training effect, you're trying to get a pump, or you're just trying to keep things in and around that same RPE range. The prescription for this is going to look like 100 by 4, maintain at 7. Right? That's basically what we're going to look like looking to achieve something like this. So the idea is you're going to start at whatever weight gives you your at 7 for 4. In this case, again, we're going to use the example of it being 100 kilos. So you complete the first set, perfect. 100 for 4 at 7. You go to do your second set and it's a 7.5. Okay, so we bring the weight back because we're trying to stay at 7, right? We do the next set, it's 97.5, and it's a 7.5 again. So we bring the weight back a little bit more, and we end up here. And this is a perfect example of how one of these workouts might go, right? You may constantly be adjusting the load to try and keep it in and around that range. Now, I would say if you're looking to maintain it at 7, if you can get 4 sets between 6.5 and 7.5 here, you're doing just fine. Don't worry if you have some sets that are a little bit high or a little bit low. The idea is that you're floating in and around that zone. I know Mike T likes to call them surf sets or surfing around this zone. And I like that because you know how much of a fan I am of the wave analogy. All right, so next we're going to talk about how to progress some of these different ways of prescribing RPE, right? So we talked earlier about our indicator sets. Now I have here a very basic layout of how you could lay out a progression on any given lift using indicator sets and percentage-based back-off work, right? So we have lifter A here, and in week 1, we're going to hit a 3 at 8 indicator set, and then 5 by 5 at 75%. Week 2, we're going to keep it the same 3 at 8 indicator set, but we're going to do 5 sets of 4 at 77.5%. The next week, we're going to do a triple at 9, single at 7, single at 7.5, single at 8, and you can see the progression here through both getting more and more high intensity and more specific via our indicator sets, as well as very linearly, very classically progressing our percentage-based back-off work. So this can be applied to a very standard linear periodization model. This can also be applied to something a little more bottom up. If you're looking at changing rep ranges and intensities a little bit less, we can talk about that maybe in another video. But to fit this within the sort of currently prevailing paradigm of how we're programming, using this kind of a progression is more or less what I would expect to do in any sort of template program that we would sell, or that I would give to a lifter their first time working with me if they're not already an advanced athlete or something. The next thing that we talked about were these ramping sets. Now the ramping set progression, I actually have a way that I really like to do this. So we're going to go through, we're going to build the same week progression here. So we're going to test in week 7. And what we're going to do here is a very simple sort of wave loading progression, right? So we're going to start off with 5, add an 8, and 2 repeats. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically alternate a volume week with an intensity week, and a volume week, intensity week, volume week, intensity week, while dropping that rep range, right? So we have our volume week here to start with. Then we're going to go 5 at 9 plus 1 load drop. Then we're going to go by 4 at 8, 2 repeats. Then we're going to go by 4 at 9 plus 1 load drop. Then we're going to go by 3 at 8 plus 2 repeats, by 3 at 9 plus 1 load drop. Now you can use singles with this protocol as well. You can go further down even into doubles. You could extend this out however you wanted. You can obviously adjust the number of back off sets based on what your lifter responds to. Now all of this is very much just templated stuff. It's just, here's an example of how you might do this for this very theoretical lifter we know nothing about. Now, the big thing is that your job as a coach is to figure out how much of this works and how much dose they need, how much they recover, or how much they can recover from, and all those kinds of things. Like I said, this maintenance protocol is probably going to be, relatively similar. It's going to be like we're doing maybe sets of 10 for 4 sets, maintain at 8. Right? So that's your typical, maybe something like I said, that's a little bit less specific for person back off work. So what I'm going to do is I'll just save this spreadsheet. We'll attach it to a drive link in the comments below so you can see what I've got here in terms of making reference to it. And yeah, I mean, that's a pretty basic look at some of the ways we can start using RPE to prescribe intensity for a lifter or ourselves, and B, how we can progress it throughout a block of training. Again, super simplified, very straightforward, but I think this kind of information is maybe a little bit underutilized, and maybe there could be more of this kind of stuff that's just, okay, here's how you do it, take it, try it, and go from there, right? So hopefully you all are able to take something away from this video, and let us know if you like this video style. It's a little bit differently, put together. And yeah, this is easier for us to do given the current situation of the world and lack of gyms and those kinds of things. So if you're interested in more content like this, I've been doing a lot more streaming lately. We did a programming stream last week, so head over to twitch.tv/Calgary Barbell to check that out. And yeah, we've got more in the pipes, so stay tuned, and we'll see y'all in the next one. Thanks for tuning in.